So what is really going on in Libya's civil war right now? General Wesley Clark joins us. He is a former NATO Supreme Allied Commander. Thank you so much for being here. You heard this opposition leader. He says that if the UN bombs Libya, this could be wrapped up in 3 days. Do you agree?
It's not clear. I mean, I don't think the Libyan forces could withstand a full-fledged NATO assault for very long, no. But I think the struggle now has entered a new phase. So what I hope, first of all, the United States has declared its objective. As Secretary of State said, we want Gaddafi out of there. So we've got the UN ceasefire and no-fly zone resolution behind us. So that's our international legal leverage. Now we have to put an organization together, get those aircraft in the air, get the diplomats on the ground, and use that leverage to force Gaddafi out.
General,
that's the art of this.
What's the timetable we're talking about? Are we talking about hours, days?
Well, I would hope we'll see aircraft up very, very quickly.
What does that mean?
The hours. But the diplomacy is the key factor here. You see, Gaddafi will use this time. Gaddafi has no intention of leaving. He wants to stay. So he'll consolidate his gains in the areas that he's retained or captured. He'll send his intelligence agents through, his police. He'll demand to put his police back into Benghazi and Misrata. He'll infiltrate intelligence agents in there. He'll be threatening the opposition and their families. So this is a struggle in a new phase. We've got to be very tough and artful in using diplomacy and the leverage we have against Gaddafi.
So at the same time, the military and the United Nations will be acting. What specifically will the United States be doing in this no-fly zone effort?
Well, that's not clear. The president hasn't made that decision public. I'm sure that we're involved deeply in the planning of it. It's not clear whether it's going to come through NATO. It doesn't sound like it. The Germans abstained in the resolution. Maybe some NATO assets will be employed. Maybe it'll be done under the auspices of the European Union. That also seems questionable. Maybe it will be a coalition in which the United States will be a member. I would hope that whatever is done, that we have Arab aircraft in the front lines flying over Libya, not just Western aircraft, but Arab aircraft. And then if we need NATO airborne control, we can put that in.
If you were advising the president, General, what would you tell him? What role should the U.S. play at this point? Should we be putting up our aircraft? Should we be bombing those installations?
Well, at this point, if the ceasefire is in place, if this was just a confusion on the part of the Libyans, then there's no mandate for bombing. But if they're still fighting, yes, we should go after the forces that are targeting and shelling civilians. But that's not going to change the outcome. What's going to change the outcome is the clever use of the threat and the UN resolution on the ground to leverage Gaddafi out. How do we do that? That's where the thought has to be applied right now. Is it to call for early elections? Is it to do a poll? Is it to do a criminal investigation of what Gaddafi's done so far with the idea of bringing war crimes charges against him? All of these must be in discussion right now behind the scenes in the White House and in councils in Europe and the Middle East. And then a program has to be developed, and it has to be carried in there and very forcefully given to Gaddafi.
And General, do you believe
diplomats.
Do you believe that those options are still available, that those options, diplomatic options, are still on the table, despite the fact that we have seen explosions and firepower that's still coming from Gaddafi forces?
Well, ultimately, this has to be resolved by diplomacy unless it's a full-scale invasion. We've got the leverage now of the no-fly zone. Let's use it. If he's still shelling, let's get the aircraft up there and take out the artillery and the other things that are causing the shelling. But of course it has to be resolved by diplomacy.
And finally, General, you said this is something that you would see happen within hours, not within days. How much time would you give the Gaddafi government before you decide that this is the right time?
Oh, I wouldn't give the Gaddafi government any time. You're asking me how long will it take to get the aircraft up there. I'm saying, because I'm not in the chain of command, I can't read that. But within hours, once the president has announced the decision, I would assume that all this planning's gone on behind the scenes. If it hasn't, it should have, and there should be aircraft up there within hours of the announcement of the decision. That we're not giving, I hope we're not giving Gaddafi any time on this, because obviously what he wants to do is announce a ceasefire, then continue to press forward and try to try to change the facts on the ground. What we want to do is freeze the facts on the ground and then use diplomacy and the weight of international law to leverage him out of office.
General Clark, thank you very much. Appreciate your perspective.